Hey, I'm Dave Shackleford of the SANS Institute, and today I'm joined by Greg Mayfield, Director of Product Marketing for Tenable, and what we're going to be discussing is the ever-changing world of cloud security. And this is our second of 3 short videos where we're really going to be delving into how vulnerability management is evolving and changing, and necessarily changing, I think we'd both agree, in the world of cloud, given that we really have a very different threat surface now facing us. So security practitioners have a wealth of really good examples over the past several years where we've come to the realization, I'd say the unfortunate realization, that as soon as you put your assets into the cloud, you're now dealing with cloud service providers and potentially any number of other service providers along the way that could have issues just like you could. Yep. And lots of those examples stand out. So for instance, we've seen Cloudflare, which is a very large content delivery network provider that had a major bug where they were leaking memory all out over the internet and got called out for it and in fact responded very well. But I think security professionals that were dealing with Cloudflare were probably going, oh my gosh, what the heck is going on? What kind of data have I exposed out to the internet? And what that really shows you, I think, is number one, this notion of something that we've come to refer to as the shared responsibility model in the world of cloud computing. And that shared responsibility model, I think, can be broken down into 2 things. And that's the security in the cloud, which is our assets and what we're responsible for locking down. And then the security of the cloud, which is the cloud provider. And if you don't know where that control delineation is, in other words, what are they responsible for and what are we responsible for, you're probably going to have some of those surprises along the way. And there's plenty of other examples too. Yeah. And in fact, I think one of my, I don't want to say favorite examples because it's never good when you have these kinds of things happen, but there was a really interesting case that occurred where Microsoft Azure, in fact, exposed a really sensitive private key in some of their template images in the environment, and it was discovered by an Irish researcher who ethically disclosed it to them, but it was legitimately the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah. Shared certificates, I believe.
Exactly, shared certificates that allowed him to hypothetically take over their entire back-end orchestration platform. And once again, you realize you're relying on this cloud provider, whoever that cloud provider is, to handle some of this, but I think a lot of people don't really understand some of those things that are happening out there.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Just to reiterate, a lot of folks that are just getting into cloud and just adopting workloads there, have to realize there is a responsibility there. You can't expect your cloud service provider to do everything for you. So, your responsibility for SecOps still moves to the cloud. It's just in a different way.
Right.
And so always understand the point I think you mentioned earlier was in the cloud as opposed to for the cloud. And regardless of which vendor you go with, assessment, vulnerability management, and so forth still continues onward. Once again, it's a different deployment model, and what you have to do still stays the same. You have to first, to our earlier video, gather the appropriate assets and inventory and understand what you have. You can't secure what you don't know about. So that's the first step. In this next step, it's a matter of saying, based upon that, then let's look at the assets and take different approaches to actually tag them, inventorying them, and then using them for further assessments and vulnerability exposure analysis and so forth. So once again, just repeating some of the points that I think some folks may or may not know, vulnerability types of tools that are focused on that and don't just rely on maybe just a logging tool that does that and everything else. Using, in some cases, agent-based systems. And that's important to think about with all the applications and containers and so forth that are going on now in cloud environments. Applications and services are popping up and going down rather quickly. So having something that can have that elasticity of saying, here's a new asset, we need to scan and assess that asset and verify the integrity of it. That's changed from, the on-prem world. And then you could use, third-party scanning tools and monitoring tools, as a lot of folks do as well. That doesn't change as long as you do it in a continuous manner.
I think that's a good point, too. And I think that notion of continuous assessment and continuous monitoring in all the forms you mentioned is something that security professionals are, in fact, having to really get their minds around and come to the realization that you may need some new tools and different tools to do the job.
Agreed.
And really get that in place.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And think about it too, from a cloud perspective, if you are moving to the cloud, think about all the reasons why your environment, your organization is moving to the cloud in the first place. Scalability, agility, efficiency, lower costs, things like that. If you have a vulnerability system that takes advantage of those same benefits,
right.
I think it's better off for the SecOps team, better off for the DevOps team and IT ops and so forth, as opposed to saying we have I always call this a square peg in a round hole, where you say we had something that used to work for us in the data center, why can't we get it to work for us in cloud? It's two different perspectives altogether.
Totally agree. Yeah, sometimes you can't take it with you.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
true.
Yeah, well, thanks, Greg, and thanks so much, everybody, for joining us in this second of our 3 short videos on cloud security.